I used to think my mother was a burden standing between me and success. Now I would give everything just to hear her call my name once. She still breathes, still smiles sometimes, but memory has already taken me away. That is the punishment I earned while believing there would always be tomorrow. My mother raised me alone after my father disappeared with debts and excuses. She cleaned offices at night and sold fruit each morning to feed me. I remember her cracked hands counting coins, then pretending our life felt normal. Back then, I promised I would repay her with comfort, pride, and gratitude. Somewhere along the way, ambition hardened into shame about where I came from. I started dressing sharper, speaking colder, and correcting her in front of people often. She mispronounced words sometimes, and I laughed like education had made me better. When she asked simple questions, I answered with impatience instead of tenderness there. I told myself I was busy, but really I was embarrassed by her simplicity. Success had given me money, but it also gave my ego an ugly accent. I rented a modern apartment and moved her in after neighbors started talking. I called it duty, though love was missing from the way I did. She thanked me constantly, even when I made her feel unwelcome inside home. She kept her slippers aligned, folded blankets neatly, and tried taking little space. I noticed everything except the loneliness following her from room to room daily. At dinners with colleagues, I introduced her quickly and changed subjects almost immediately. My mother would smile politely, unaware I was quietly shrinking her existence there. One night, she brought tea to my desk and asked if work hurt. I snapped because she interrupted a call, and her hands began trembling softly. She apologized 3 times for kindness, and I let her feel guilty anyway. That moment should have broken me, but pride keeps cruelty feeling reasonable inside. I always believed bigger sins belonged to monsters, not ordinary sons like me. Mine was quieter: neglect, contempt, impatience, and the slow violence of daily disrespect. She would wait awake until I returned home, just to see me briefly. I came in tired, nodded coldly, and walked past her careful love again. Sometimes she asked whether I had eaten, like I was still 17 again. Instead of hearing love, I heard need, and I resented her dependence deeply. The truth is, she was less dependent than my ego needed her there. Having her nearby reminded me who I had been before promotions and suits. I wanted polished success, not a mother who spoke with village manners openly. So I corrected her posture, words, clothes, routines, even how she laughed sometimes. She accepted it all with the heartbreaking humility only mothers seem to have. My friends called me devoted because I paid bills and housed her comfortably. Nobody saw how tone can bruise deeper than hands ever need to do. Then age began changing her in ways I dismissed as ordinary forgetfulness at first. She repeated stories at breakfast, then repeated them again before lunch ended daily. I rolled my eyes and checked my phone while she searched for words. When she forgot where cups belonged, I spoke to her like staff instead. She laughed it off, but confusion lingered in her eyes afterward for hours. One afternoon, she asked whether my father would join us for dinner tonight. He had been gone 26 years, and suddenly the room felt colder there. I told her sharply that he was dead, and she flinched like a child. She whispered sorry to the air, then asked me where her mother lived. That was the first time fear entered me without asking permission at all. The doctor spoke gently about tests, decline, progression, safety, patience, and coming loss. I heard every word,
but guilt was the only one that stayed afterward. Driving home, she watched rain on the window and smiled like nothing changed. I wanted to cry, but shame had trained my tears to hide from me. From then on, our days filled with medicine boxes, appointments, labels, and reminders. She forgot neighbors first, then distant cousins, then recipes she once knew perfectly. Later, she forgot birthdays, seasons, and whether she had already eaten lunch today. Still, some old habits survived, especially asking whether I had eaten enough today. Even fading away, she kept mothering the son who had dishonored her deeply. That kindness became harder to bear than any punishment the world could invent. I started canceling meetings to stay home, though she no longer noticed sacrifices. Caregiving humbled me, but humility arriving late still carries the taste of cowardice. Some mornings she knew me instantly and touched my cheek with familiar warmth. I lived for those moments the way thirsty people chase distant water desperately. Other mornings she stared politely, as if I were a helpful stranger nearby. Each time that happened, I met the consequence of every selfish year there. Once she asked whether I was the new driver sent by relatives today. I smiled so she would not panic, then broke down alone later upstairs. The cruelest mercy of memory loss is that only one heart remembers everything. She was forgetting pain, but I was forced to keep carrying mine alone. I began cooking her soups, brushing her hair, and reading old prayers nightly. These were simple acts she had once done for me without applause daily. Every spoon I lifted felt like an apology arriving years too late already. I stopped caring whether my apartment looked elegant, quiet, modern, or impressive anymore. What mattered was helping her feel safe inside a world becoming unfamiliar daily. Sometimes she wandered toward the door and asked when her son returned home. I would answer, "I am here, Mom," but the words rarely reached her. She would nod politely, unconvinced, then thank me for being so kind there. Nothing exposes a son's failure like hearing gratitude where recognition should have lived. I started bringing photo albums, hoping faces might build a bridge back home. We turned pages slowly, weddings, school uniforms, birthdays, kitchens, winters, and summers together. Sometimes she recognized herself as young, but looked at me uncertainly for moments. Once her finger stopped on a photograph, and she said, "Handsome boy there." I asked if she knew who he was, and I barely breathed afterward. She smiled and said, "He looks like someone I loved very much once." I went to the bathroom and sobbed with both hands over my mouth. No courtroom could sentence me harder than those 8 gentle words ever spoken. By then, I understood regret is not loud. It is unbearably repetitive daily. It lives in missed calls, delayed visits, annoyed sighs, and careless corrections forever. It lives in every time love asked for softness and received performance instead. As months passed, she needed help dressing, bathing, eating, and finding bathrooms safely. I learned her rhythms, favorite cardigan, safest spoon, calm songs, and triggers carefully. Care taught me attention, and attention finally taught me what love requires daily. Love is not provision alone. It is patience expressed in ordinary moments daily. It is answering gently the 10th repeated question, not just the first one. It is protecting dignity when weakness makes someone slower, smaller, and afraid inside. My mother taught me that twice, once in childhood and once through forgetting. Near the end, she slept more, spoke less, and held my sleeve often. One evening she looked straight at me with sudden, impossible clarity in silence. She touched my face and whispered my name like returning from far away. I said, "I'm sorry, Mom," and everything inside me collapsed right then. She smiled faintly, closed her eyes, and never found my face again afterward. So I tell this story for every child postponing tenderness until a better day. There may be medicine for memory, but there is none for wasted chances. Do not wait for fear to teach you how precious ordinary love is. Sit longer, answer softer, visit sooner, and honor the hands that raised you. I learned too late that losing recognition can hurt more than losing life.